What happens when one learns stories and then one does the teachings, then moves back to the stories and the teachings? When one does this and then begins deep meditations into oneself, it makes one more sensitive to hearing and telling stories, which indeed opens one for deeper meditations, and it goes back and forth and back and forth. How many of you have read the Curse of Blessings? Not too many, some. I'll tell a story. This story occurred to me 15 years ago, something like that. The Chabad would have a large bonfire, traditional. It's not often done anymore, but we would go down to Homestead to an orchard, have a huge bonfire, and we would walk around and we would tell stories. And I needed a story. And it was the night before the bonfire. I went to sleep and needed a story. I woke up halfway through the night and I woke Wally up and I said, I have the story. And I said, no, I only have half of it. And I went back to sleep and dreamed the other half. I'm still learning from this story. I'll tell the story in all worlds and see how much of it moves on. There was once an officer of the law, a recent graduate of the academy, who wore a uniform, deep purple with gold epaulets and gold buttons, and he had a sword with a beautiful handle, gilt, gorgeous, with a tassel. And he walked his walk through the village, arrogant and bold and callous, and every letter of the alphabet served only to exalt his greed. And as he walked, he looked this way and that, and he happened to look into an alley. And in the alley he saw, in the shadows, what seemed to be a man dressed in rags. And he said to the man, "Come out here so I can see you." The man did not move. The officer of the law said again, "Come out here where I can see you." And the man began to move forward. He said, "Come out here right into the clear light of day so I can see you." And the man in rags came out looking at the officer of the law. And finally he spoke and he said, "Now I know what to do with you." "Do with me? I am the officer of the law. You don't do with me, I do with you." Whereupon, suddenly, the man in rags had a sword in his hand. And the officer of the law had no choice but to draw his own sword to defend himself. And he parried every thrust. And finally, he said, after trying to force the man in rags to put his sword down, he said, "I have no choice." And one of his parries became a thrust and ran through the man in rags. The children love that part. The man in rags fell to the ground. The officer of the law said, "I never meant to hurt you. Why did you attack me? Why did you do that?" The man in rags said to the officer of the law, he said, "I'm going to leave now. I'm leaving. And as I leave, I put on you the curse of blessings." The curse of blessings. Yes, the curse of blessings. Every day you have to say a new blessing, one you have never said before. And if you do not say a new blessing, on that day your life will come to an end. The officer of the law didn't know what to make of that. He looked around for help. There was no help. He looked back, and the man in rags had disappeared. The officer of the law said, "It's a dream. I just dreamt it. It's not real." But the sun was beginning to set, and the Jewish day ends at sunset. And as the sun began to set, the officer of the law felt his fingertips going numb, and the numbness beginning to move up his arms. And he recognized with alarm that the blessing, the curse of blessings, had been for real. In quickly he said, thank you, God, a blessing, that there's such a beautiful sunset. And immediately, warmth flowed back into his body. The next morning when he awoke, he didn't wait. He said, bless you for this finger, which moves so wonderfully well. And the next day, the next finger. After 10 days, 10 finger, 10 toes. After 10 toes, each of the limbs of his body. 248 days that took. And then after that, clothes. He blessed every garment that he wore. He blessed everything that he used, the knife, the fork, the spoon, the plates. He blessed everything with which he interacted, the street lamp, everything. And after many years, he ran out of things to bless. And he began to bless couples. You look very good together. And bless them. And other couples and relationships, he began to bless them. And there were myriad relationships. And the word got out that these blessings were for real. And people came to him, couples to be married, people indeed, they came to him for blessings, and he pronounced the blessings, and this went on for many years. And even as he did this, he began to search for deeper meaning, because he had recognized that he was not the source of blessing, only the conduit. And so he began to learn. And he studied in every discipline, and each new awareness came a new blessing. And city councils reached out to him that he might open sessions with blessings, and bridges were opened. He would cut the ribbon with a blessing. He became known as a master of blessings, and this continued a great many years. Until finally he began to look for the source of blessing. And as he looked for the source of blessing, he would gain an insight that was almost beyond words into the flow and purpose of life around him. And with each recognition, he intoned a blessing, and that kept him alive yet another day. Finally, he reached the age of 120. And he said, it's enough. It's enough already. On this, my 120th birthday, I will say no new blessings and allow my life to come to an end. That didn't mean he couldn't say the old ones. And so he reached back through his memory and recalled all the blessings he had said for things and for body parts that had served him well, for all the wonderful relationships that he had blessed, and all the wonderful ideas that he had realized in institutions, and then the beautiful spiritual realizations that had settled into him later on later. And he said, "May you bless him." The sun began to set, and he felt a numbness begin to move up from his fingers to his hands and wrists. And he didn't resist it. He said, "It's all right, it's enough." And as he looked out, he saw coming towards him the man in rags. "You," he said, "I've been thinking about you every day for 100 years. I never meant to hurt you. Why did you attack me like that? Why?" And the man in rags said, "You don't understand? You haven't figured it out yet?" And the officer of the law said, "What?" He said, "I was the angel who came to harvest your soul 100 years ago. But I looked at you so proud and pompous, all I saw was a uniform empty of anything inside. And so I put on you this curse of blessings. And now, look what you've become." The eyes of the officer of the law opened in astonishment. And he said, "Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'ehiyanu v'kiyamanu v'hiyanu lazman hazeh," that you have kept me alive to attain this moment. Now look what you've done, said the man of God. And he and the officer of the law faced each other, neither of them knowing quite what to do. And that's the story.